welcome to the DHL Supply Chain Pricing Power Index update. I'm here with Andrew Cox. Andrew, what's the latest?
Well, Anthony, the carriers have gained a little bit of momentum back after a little bit of a seasonal lull, or maybe just kind of a breather in between waves of restocking and waves of imports. So we saw that September is typically a weaker month comparatively to leading into the holiday season. In 2018 and 2019, we each saw volumes start higher and end lower for the month. That was the case also this year. But like we were mentioning off camera here, that chaos has kind of become the new norm. So we've had, I'll break down into some of the segments here, but things are just extremely elevated. They look to be elevated through the end of the holiday season. There looks to be no reprieve really for shippers moving forward.
Exactly. I mean, you look at these numbers, 85 right now, and as you mentioned, chaos being the new normal. This was at 80, 85, just dancing between those two numbers over the last few months, right? Yeah,
it's been upwards of 80, I think, since mid-August, and you'll see why. So breaking down into the volumes here, we've been above this 15,000 value since mid-August, and while we know that there are some of the counted rejected tenders in here, the overall idea and the trend here is intact. The volumes have been elevated. They're continuing to be elevated. We'll talk about some of that consumer data towards the end, but people are spending a lot of money on consumer goods right now. Retail spending, excluding autos, is up 7% year over year. All of that's happening while the consumer surveys of home, both the University of Michigan and the Conference Board, which we spoke about, I think, on Tuesday, those are both hit pandemic highs for September. So, you know, consumers are feeling pretty good right now. They're spending, and the COVID cases are starting to trend upwards, which is definitely a major factor that they'll be watching. But right now, they're feeling okay.
Yeah, definitely a lot of downstream activity when we're looking at the two segments. I mean, manufacturing looking to slow a little bit with new orders starting to ease back from the latest PMI. We see volumes are so high. What does this mean for capacity and rejections?
Well, it remains extremely tight, right? So this is by far the longest time we've ever had above 25% on the outbound tender rejection index. We've always thought that that's kind of the natural ceiling for it at that time. Then carriers and shippers begin to renegotiate, and they kind of bring contract rates back up towards where spot rates are at the time. You know, we've reached it twice before in 2018, but again, that was roughly for 3 weeks. We've been there since mid-August. So it's been a long time since carriers have been rejecting 1 in every 4 loads, and there really is no reprieve in sight, like I said earlier.
Right, and so with this, of course, I'm sure transportation prices are through the roof right now, and a lot of this is going to be consumer facing?
Yeah, a lot of it is, and you're right about the prices. We can take a quick look here. The spot rates, again, what I mean by we're kind of in that broken record territory that we were earlier in the year, back even before the pandemic hit, where there just wasn't much volatility. We're in that pace now. It's not that things aren't chaotic, they are, but it's just chaotic. Chaos has become the norm. So rates are now, just under $3 a mile. And let's look at some of that consumer spending data. So this is year-over-year total card spending by day. We've been roughly flat since mid-August. I think we've peaked out at about plus 10%, but right now we're running about plus 1, minus 1%, which is good, given that there's still 25 million people collecting unemployment benefits of some sort. The unemployment rate is still, high 7%. This is actually really good data given that economic backdrop. And the better part for both shippers and carriers is that mix shift that we continue to talk about. People are spending far less on services. There's people that won't be able to take their holiday trips this summer. There's people that may not go out to dinner as much or go out to do many of the services that they're used to doing. I mean, all of these in the dark red are all service related spending, and the ones that are heavy green are all good spending that moves on trucks. So it's a good thing for both shippers and carriers moving into the holiday season.
And one of the things you mentioned previously on the last chart was that credit card spending. We even saw how it just kind of hovered around that midline even after the suspension of those bonus benefits. So really showing that consumers are still spending with or without that additional incentive. Looking at this data here, showing that new norm, such a drop in airline and all these services as you spoke to, but that high number for online and electronics, card not present, so those e-commerce, definitely seems like a new norm with these through the roof week-to-week numbers.
Yeah, you made a good point about how the lack of benefits or that second stimulus check, it really hasn't made that big of a difference in the last couple of weeks in spending. That's a very important point. The same thing goes for the consumer surveys. We saw that the lack of benefits in September after they expired in August didn't really hamper or dampen the consumer confidence moving forward. So that's a really big point, and it gives me some confidence moving that even if we don't get another stimulus check, that we'll still have a pretty strong holiday season.
Excellent, Andrew. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Where can people find more?
You can always go to FreightWaves.com FreightWaves.com/passport for all the latest. JP's team puts out multiple reports a week, as does I's team. We'll be back there for Great Quarter Guys on Tuesday. Check out that for all the latest.
Excellent. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. And thank you so much for tuning in. That's going to do it for this DHL Supply Chain Pricing Power Index update. Be sure to tune in next week for all the latest.